Let's do this. So, welcome to week 3, day 1. And I've gotten a few questions about this quiz, so let's go over it. The just two simple true or false questions, and 51% average score. So, no time limit on this, so you had plenty of time to look at the claim and evaluate the evidence for it. First of all, 13th Amendment outlaws slavery in the United States under all circumstances. I think it's the 14th, isn't it? No, it is 13th. Okay, yeah. So a lot of people think that the 13th Amendment outlaws slavery under all circumstances. Is not the case. There is a exception, except as a punishment for crime. So that's one of the reasons why prison labor is allowed. It's essentially slave labor. And this is something that not a lot of people know, but it's a simple claim. It outlaws slavery under all circumstances. We evaluate the claim by looking at the text for the 13th Amendment. Right? If what you did was look at the analysis, especially if you look at the analysis of it for like school children, they would say it outlawed slavery. Kind of. Right? Kind of. And then the second one, which is the one I got more of the questions about, says that Trump's Executive Order 13950, repealed by Biden, banned the use of terms such as critical race theory, white privilege, intersectionality, systemic racism, and unconscious bias in any training or materials used by institutions receiving federal funding of any kind. And you can read more about it here. And so you go to this website here, and you look at the American Alliance of Museums, which is clearly a unbiased and neutral source. Why would they lie to you? And they have an update from the beginning of last year when Biden took office that it's been basically they're not going to be enforcing 1390 anymore. And then here's the original press release they made saying that the President of the United States issued an executive order, among other things, bans the use of terms critical race theory, white privilege, intersectionality, systemic racism, and unconscious bias in any training or materials used by institutions receiving federal funding of any kind. And so clearly, the answer is true, right? Wrong. And it actually doesn't. So if you were to pull up the original text for Executive Order 13950 and search for critical race theory, you will see that term appears nowhere within the executive order. And so this is what being a critical thinker is about. Critical thinking is about digging into a claim, and in fact, a claim was made here by the American Alliance of Museums, and they're lying to you. So, yeah. So it seems like it's a trustworthy source. Museums are not well known for, lying to people, right? They're not CNN or Fox. They're museums, right? And the reality of the fact is it's wrong. And it's not even like, this isn't like an opinion thing or anything like that. Like, you can open up the executive order and hit Control F and search for these terms, and they don't appear on it. So it's just a purely factual claim, and it's just wrong. And the effect of it, Night of the Museum, actually false. Yeah, it's actually false. The the claim is actually just out and out a lie. So. So, Kearney, why would you give us a link to, read more about it here? To make this point, right? That when you're a critical thinker, you have to get used to looking things up, because people will say things all the time. Listen to the radio, watch TV, read a news article, and they'll make claims all the time. And the best way of getting at the truth in a lot of these circumstances is to look at the primary source. The primary source in this case is available online. You can quite easily pull up the text for Executive Order 13950 and just see for yourself if the claim is true. Okay. I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday. I gave us a false link. I gave you the link that I gave you is not false. It's a link that I came across myself. In fact, it was echoed onto the website of the Museum of Us in San Diego. It used to be called the Museum of Man, and they decided that man was a gendered term, so they changed it to Museum of Us. And I was trying to find out what happened to the museum because I grew up in San Diego, and I want to take my kid to the Museum of Man. I'm like, did the museum vanish? Like, what happened here? And so, like, in the process of all this, I came across their website, and they had posted this exact word-for-word claim on their website as well, because they had copied it from the American Alliance of Museums. Right? Do you see what I'm getting at here? So, like, one person makes a mistake. I don't know if it was, to what extent it was deliberate, or, you know, not. Like, I'm not a mind reader. I can't guess these things. But the AAM, the American Association of Museums, made a claim, and then it was just copied and pasted onto other museums' websites as well. And and then I looked at this claim. I'm like, okay, is that right? You know, and so I look it up. I'm like, it's not right. And then I see, all right, so where did the Museum of Us get this from? And I'm like, oh, they got it from this thing, you know. And so it was interesting and yet also annoying, because museums really should know better because they're museums, right? So, yeah, and so it's very easy. Here's the thing. It's very easy to just like look at a headline, or to like look at the summary from like a web page and be like, oh, yeah, it's true, you know. So I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday who was a archaeologist, and we were talking about this very topic. In fact, he might come in and do a guest lecture to you all. He's a really cool dude, and he works as an archaeologist. He studies Native American petroglyphs, you know, and things like that. He goes out there and he catalogs them, and photographs them and stuff like that. He's a really cool dude. Plays the guitar. His daughter is in 4th grade, you know, and as is mine. So we took him out for a play date, and they played, and we talked. This kind of stuff. And he said, yeah, I remember listening to the radio, and they claimed that you could get AIDS from pigs. And now I know to do your own research, even if there is this, dig into the primary source, right? And so this radio station made a claim that you can get AIDS from pigs. And so, no, I think I'm confusing the two examples. ABC News claimed it. He had two examples. Either way, so it was either ABC News or a radio station. And no, yeah, it was ABC News. And then the fact that adultery is caused by genetics was a claim made by a radio station. And so ABC News in the late 90s ran a story saying that you can get AIDS from pigs. And the reporter interviewed a number of geneticists and all, you know, these experts who all said, no, you can't. The virus is incompatible with humans. Like it in fact, we know the part that it targets, and humans don't have it, pigs do. It's literally impossible for you to get it from it, and it can't even like mutate and jump species that easily. And the reporters say, well, besides that, you know, like, and they just, you know, did a horrible job representing the science. And so my friend's thesis is that, you know, science reporting in particular is bad. Right? In part because sometimes they try to go for sensationalism like that, where they, do pigs cause AIDS? Tune in at 11, you know, to get clicks. You know, we'd call it clickbait nowadays. That was a TV show, so, same idea. You know, trying to get views to get money. And so partly it's sensationalism, and partly it's the fact that science reporters are usually not scientists and don't have the appropriate level of background knowledge needed to evaluate scientific claims, and don't have the sort of minimal training needed to even, you know, look at a science, publication and understand the difference between like a preliminary study and like, a large group study that's double blind and all this kind of stuff. So you can't get it from pigs. No, you can't. And every person the reporter apparently interviewed was like, no, you can't get it from pigs. And the reporter's like, well, anyhow. So besides that, and just like, so, and then the other story that he was telling me about was there was a local radio station who read a story about a very preliminary study, N equals 15. There were 15 people in the study, and they try to determine if there's a genetic basis for adultery. And so based on the results of this very small study they said there seems to be some preliminary evidence that there could be some contributing factor from genetics. That was it. It's a very weak claim. When you have a preliminary study, that is a very, very weak claim. And the radio station announced, well, science has now shown that adultery is caused by genetics, and which is just wrong, right? It didn't show that. And they said it proved it. No, it didn't. It didn't. It was a preliminary result. A preliminary result means, we did a really small study. It looks like there might be information that we got out of this that might indicate this thing happens. So please, NSF, give us more money and we will do a bigger study and see if the preliminary results hold up. And they didn't over time, right? But this radio station ran this thing as if it was proven fact, because there was a study with 15 people, and so he actually wrote to the radio station, and they actually wrote back to him, and they said, "Oh yeah, we just simplify things for the common audience." He's like, "No, you're not simplifying things. Like you're saying it's proven fact, and now there's going to be a bunch of people running around." And the really funny thing is like I actually heard the results of that study from another friend of mine saying that it was fact, and so that friend probably heard the radio station, or maybe it could have been a different radio station, and heard that it was fact, and then he relayed it to me, and then I heard it from my other friend how he got into like an argument with the radio station and the DJ, like, no, I'm a real scientist, you can't misrepresent science this way. And they're like, oh, well, we're just dumbing it down for the audience, He's like, no, you're not dumbing it down, you're just lying, and now there's going to be all these people out there who think this is true when it's not, You have a responsibility to like not lie to people. And so that was yesterday at Woodward Park. We were having this conversation. So this reminds me of the one aunt you have. Yeah, there's a lot of people that if you go onto Facebook, they will just repeat anything that they see. I have a rule myself on Facebook, which is I basically don't share stories, and that's a very easy way to not participate in the spreading of misinformation. Right, everything I write onto Facebook, with very few exceptions, are either photographs I take myself or text that I write myself. So, if every once in a while there might be a news story, like once a year maybe there'll be a news story that I think people need to read about that isn't just making the rounds. But even still, I read it very carefully. And then I look at the primary sources behind it very carefully to make sure that I'm not sharing misinformation. It's really, really easy instead to just click share, or on Twitter to retweet something. Oh, look, somebody that I like tweeted something, so I'm going to retweet it, and boost the signal and all this kind of stuff. And they very rarely actually check the sources before they do that. So, like one thing that made the rounds a year or two ago was this notion of ugly fruit. You should buy ugly fruit at the grocery store because Americans waste billions of dollars of produce of ugly fruit a year. Have you guys ever heard this? Misinformation on Facebook leads to entertainment in the comment section. That is true. Wow. Fruit's ugly, your dad would let it take you out in his convertible without daddy, you'd be home by curfew. So there was this meme or whatever going around saying that like Americans throw away billions of dollars of produce a year because we don't buy ugly fruit, and so the grocery stores just throw it all away, and we could like feed all the homeless in America if we just would buy the ugly fruit and not throw it away and not waste it. And it's more or less a fabrication, because what happens to ugly fruit is that it gets turned into jams and things like that. So, fruit people who make fruit are not dumb, and we don't waste food unless we could really help it. Eat ugly fruit. And there you go. So. Let's see if we can find. Yeah, whatever. It doesn't matter. Eat ugly fruit. So everything we eat is processed sunshine. Oh, how fantastic. Okay. And so yeah, like it's just nonsense, right? Like they'll sort out the ugly fruit and then turn it into jams and things like that, or V8 fruit, vegetable juice and things like that. You're hungry now? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's just and like all of my friends were just like sharing, like, oh, make sure you go to the store and buy the ugliest fruit you can. It's like, okay, only use Facebook for the marketplace. Christians against seedless watermelons. Facebook is not a reliable source of information. Yeah, so yeah, that's an understatement, right? Go get some Denny's. Is that a simple way of avoiding misinformation is just to not share anything, but if you do share something, then check your sources. Like, is it true that ugly fruit gets thrown away? Is it true that pigs can cause AIDS? Is it just do the most cursory of searches at least. But really what you want to do is actually look at the primary source. If you're reading like a CNN article on ugly fruit, being thrown away, like, okay, where did they get their information from? And you click on that link and you find, where that came from. And then if that was another news source, because a lot of times news sources quote each other without actually looking at the primary sources, you have to dig down and find the primary source. Like, do you guys know the primary sources for our plastic straw ban in California? Does anyone here like paper straws out of curiosity? The ones like stick to your lips, when you drink from them. You guys like those paper straws? Or you can always go to boba and bring your own solid steel boba straw that's like this big, and bamboo straws. Yeah. I tried a bamboo toothbrush once. I threw it away. Like I couldn't deal with it. I don't know what was wrong with it. It might have just been on the shelf for too long. Alright. I don't think anyone likes paper straws. Yeah. So the state of California banned plastic straws, or they sort of banned it, because like, here's a plastic straw from Cup of Joy. But Cup of Joy is kind of a right-wing coffee store, so I don't expect them really to follow the environmental laws too much. Anyway, for a paper straws made of plastic. Metal straws are kind of metal. I'd rather drink from the rim of a cup than use a paper straw. Yeah, metal straws make you feel devious, or like you can if you have to defend yourself in a pinch, you got your giant steel boba straw. It was based on a middle school kid's science fair project. So this kid didn't even have any actual primary source data. They just did an estimate of based on the number of drinks drunk in California a year, then this many plastic straws are going to be used per year, and we're just going to guess that a certain fraction of them go into the ocean. And so if we ban plastic straws, then we're going to stop 9 trillion plastic straws from going to the ocean this year. So, yeah. And now, Gavin Newsom or somebody like, it's like, oh, we need to stop that. And it's based on like no primary source data at all. Now, I could be entirely lying to you about it. So why don't you all see if what I told you is actually the truth? Perhaps I could just be giving Gavin Newsom a hard time. It's entirely possible. No straws save the turtles. I eat straws to prove that turtles are weak. Nah, you're not going to look it up. You think the story about a middle school kid giving the basis of a statewide law good enough. If it's a good story, it must be true. Okay. So let's see. I kind of went after Gavin Newsom there. So what can we say going after a Republican governor? Chris Christie, Bridgegate, DeSantis in Florida. Be a good example. Texas having its own power grid. Let's see. Truth is based on if you believe it or not. Yeah. All right. Okay. I know one. Let's see. So, yeah, Phoenix is fairly right wing. The area around it's fairly right wing. So this will balance it out. I was working with the area around Phoenix, Maricopa County, and this might be a little bit of life advice rather than critical thinking. Yeah, who knows? So I had a contract with them to come out every year, $33,000 a year. I would come out and teach their teachers technology. I'm a computer science professor now, but in my former life, I ran my own consulting company. I did software engineering. I wrote grants. I did evaluation of grants, and I did a lot of teacher training. So I've traveled the country. Really, really fun too. I kind of miss it a little bit, but at the same time, now that I have like a kid, like it kind of sucks being away from home, And so what I'd do is I'd travel to like Florida, and not like the fancy parts of Florida, but like the rural parts of Florida, which is like the South, like Florida, like we think of like welcome to Miami, and like Orlando and Disney World. No, like a large part of Florida is like the South, and just very rural, and the country roads taking me home and stuff like that. I got lost in the middle of Florida, and my GPS couldn't find the hotel, and so it was the middle of night, and I'm in a cornfield or something. Probably not corn, whatever. And so I was working with Maricopa County, and I had a contract with them. And one day they were like, yeah, we don't need your services anymore. We're canceling your contract. I'm like, I can't do that. Like, that's why it's called a contract. Can't just be like, rip, and we're not going to pay you, right? And they're like, no, well, you're in violation. You breached the contract. I'm like, nah, I kind of didn't. Like, I've done all the work that I've said I was going to do on this, and I'm scheduled to come out this summer, and it's like April now, and you're like saying you're in violation for like not emailing us enough. I'm like, here's my email from earlier in the year setting it up, and I've got my flight booked and my hotel, and I got my itinerary and schedule all set up for the training. Like, I don't know what you're talking about that I'm in violation. And they're like, well, you just are. So don't come. I'm like, if you tell me not to come, then you're the one who's like canceling the contract, and I'm going to have to see you. And they're like, well, do what you have to do. And so I did. So I hired a lawyer, and turns out that the Maricopa County schools had some financial issues, you might say, if you know what the air quotes mean around issues. And they were doing this with like all the contractors. Like they were going to each of them and saying like, we're to cancel you, you know. And you can't do that. Like when you have a contract, like unless there's a thing that says you can cancel it for whatever reason you want, you can't just cancel it. You know, that's why they're contracts. You know, it's an agreement, a binding agreement between two sides. And so I get a lawyer and I get all my evidence together and we file a lawsuit and we go into mandatory arbitration with them and I sit down. I'm like, look, they're saying I'm in breach because I didn't communicate enough with them or something. Here's my emails from earlier in the year. They switched project directors because they fired the project director too because of financial irregularities. And man, I just seem to have a lot of gas. Yeah, just weird. You know, just kind of ran out of money. I don't know what happened. Yeah, what happened to all that money? Who knows? You know, anything could have happened. And so they fired the project director. They brought another one on, and then when he came on, he was already working for the district, so they were kind of double dipping on his salary, you know, to save money. And then they were firing all the contractors, and he's trying to fire me for not emailing him, even though here's my email chain, you know, and I haven't not shown up for any of the work. I've literally done all the work on this grant, and he's like, well, I sent you an email asking your status and you didn't respond. I'm like, I have all of my email printouts with them. I'm like, I'm not seeing it. Hey, do you have a copy? Because they brought in like all these binders that looked really like, because you win lawsuits with documentation, you know, and they have like all these 3-ring binders of like all the things. I'm like, all right, you claim that you sent me. Okay, it is critical thinking. Yeah, you have a claim, and the whole foundation for your argument for breaking the contract is that you sent me an email and I didn't respond to it once. Where is the email? You got 900 pages of something. I don't even know what's in it. Something in front of you. Where's the email? And he's like, well, we couldn't find it. I'm like, so you can find it, and I can tell you I've never seen it. Like, who knows? Like maybe it got junk filtered. I don't know. You know? So there is no evidence for this email that you sent asking me how, you know, I was doing, and that's your entire basis for breaking the contract. You know, he's like, well, I remember sending it, I think. And the lawyer on the other side was just like, and my lawyer's like, yeah, okay, so, and then he goes through all of our documentation. Kearney has responded to every email from them. He has done all the work on the grant. He has, here are the evaluations for all the teachers. The teachers loved him and gave him a 4.6 out of 5 rating on Yelp, or, you know, the equivalent, you know, on the evaluations they filled out. You know, they're just trying to, unjustly fire him. And the arbiter, who's a lawyer, like, if you're a lawyer in Phoenix, like, you just have to be an arbiter every so often to offload cases from the judicial system. He looked at the evidence. He's like, I'll have my opinion to you within the week. And so I get a letter a week later from the arbiter. He's like, 100% for Kearney. You know, I find no merit whatsoever in the Maricopa claims. They have to pay him the full remaining balance on the contract. He doesn't have to do any work on it anymore. And so it was just basically like, ching, cash out, you know, here's all the money, Kearney. Don't work with those assholes anymore. Here you go, you know. And, I had to pay my lawyer. But he also awarded lawyer damages. And so all the legal fees that I paid to my lawyer were also paid from the county. So it ended up costing them far more money than it would have if they had just paid me. So, so there you go. So that's critical thinking. You know, there was a claim made by their side, and they could not justify it with evidence. I made a claim that I had done everything I was supposed to do. I could justify with evidence, and the lawyer looked at it and went, mm-hmm. You know, 100% knockout. So, there you go. All right. You guys are all talking about Wingstop on the chat. Okay, so do you guys understand? Claims supported by evidence. When you do your essay on Canvas, if you go into the discussion section here, and so when you get claims like that, look it up. Look up the evidence. And you can see that there are, yeah. So Fernando gave me permission. Oops, the last request didn't work out. Oops, it didn't work out. Yeah, chill. Okay. So Fernando gave me permission to post this. So let's take a look here. College is worthless and should be abolished. I think somebody on make sure you support with evidence. Yeah, and also just if you go into business, just as a general good advice, save your emails. Like especially when you're working with clients and things like that, don't delete them. You know, save everything so you have a paper trail and documentation of everything you've done. You know, and so like that was what saved me. It was like I saved my emails. Like, hey, I'm going to come out on this day, you know, and I'm going to be staying at this hotel. Does that work out for you? Yeah, of course. And they wrote back to me, you know. So it's like they knew about it, you know, like, you know, here's their responses. I have a paper trail of every, you know. So, okay, so for your discussion session, somebody asked for an example of an argument supported by evidence. And so, obviously, don't plagiarize this. We do use Turnitin, I think, to do plagiarism detection. And, you know, don't Google college is worthless and just find, you know, and don't, you know, you guys will understand the rules on plagiarism, right? Like, if you're going to quote somebody, put quotes around it and give a cite. You know, don't treat other people's words as your own. Okay. You guys. So, yeah, Fernando, thank you, and also a great profile picture. The cat is fantastic. Okay, so with that being said, I ask you to keep an open mind. So I wouldn't open with that because it's kind of like a continuation of the title, you know. But either way, I would just kind of delete that or like rework it into an actual sentence, kind of a sentence fragment. There are numerous amounts of reasons from colleges being out of touch, costing way too much, and even something as simple as not even giving you the job you wanted. So here's 3 reasons why college should be abolished. I would probably just take this title and put it right here as well. Okay. We also live in a new age. We're buying JPEGs of a monkey and investing in a virtual coin will make you a multimillionaire overnight, where you only have so much money than you would have ever made in a lifetime with your dream job. Not only are all these claims factual, which, I mean, you don't need to say that, right? But in the times of this pandemic, we're forced into online learning where I do not know about you, but I learn absolutely nothing that I can remember. Cry. Of course, I can go back in notes and study, but the Zoom life makes learning all so much more worthless. I stand firm with the belief Zoom learning is worthless and a waste of time and detrimental to children with a capital D and a capital C. Why not? Some people like get upset about capitalization, but if you look at the history of the English language, like a lot of times we would just capitalize words that we just think are important, or just we want to have stand out and things like that. And since I'm a history nerd, I am a-okay with this level of capitalization. I can say all this from my own personal experience. In the Forbes article I linked goes into detail not only backing my claims of Zoom learning being bad, but also provides many more devastating reasons. Okay, so yeah, personal experience is okay, I guess. You can't really cite it, you know. Like, who knows if you're telling the truth or not. The Forbes article down here somewhere. But you see how he put the links at the bottom here. We have a cat pic too. Yeah, yours is. I was talking about Fernando's, but yours is funny also. I would actually paraphrase the Forbes article. The Forbes article says that, you know, and just paraphrase it or do a direct quote if you want. With my first claim being the colleges are mainly out of touch with today's society. Back then, if you had a certificate over your head, that meant you were somebody, but today it means nothing. Let me elaborate. Back then, you can get any job you wanted, but now there's so much competition. There's more supply than demand. You can spend an overwhelming 61 to 62,000. I would cite that. This, anytime you have something like this, that seems like a great place to put a footnote, and then say, all right, that comes from here, right? For 10 years, for a medical doctor, it'd just be rejected at every corner. The MD site takes you along this journey and shows the devastating facts of the unreasonable price, even though they won't say it's unreasonable. The MD site. The MD journey. Okay. There's too much inflation. 78, a student was able to work in an minimum wage job and afford a year's tuition with a room and board and 4-year college. Today, that is equivalent to spending money to buy 2 electric cars and putting a large down payment on a house. True. Yeah, I think the UCs are now like 150 for 4 years, something like that, which is scandalous to me, you know. But yeah, anyway. If you do not see a problem with that, then here's why it's a problem. Quote, good. Among today's college students, 65% graduate with student debt. Last year, private student loan debt increased by 16.8 billion, or 14%. Yeah, it's bad. 50% of all American good. These are all good stuff. And then I would again footnote that probably. If not, down here is fine. That is about some number twice the population of New York. The stats. Population rate 20 million more than this. Unreasonable. Yeah. So yeah, this. I gave him a 10 out of 10 on this. Even though I'm kind of like nitpicking like some of the things, like that's what I'm looking for, right? You make a claim, support it with evidence. He's got a couple, facts here and here and here. He's got some cites for the thing. Good. That's all I'm looking for. That's all I'm looking for. That's it. And then if I were to be doing the peer review on this, I'd be like, it wasn't clear what you meant by the Forbes article or whatever, or you might want to quote the Forbes article because you can't expect the person to read it. The reason why you provide a cite is so that they can verify if you were lying or not. So if you claim the Forbes site says X, then people will click, and you as a peer reviewer will click on the link and look at it and see if the Forbes article does actually say X. Okay, so yeah, even though it's not perfect, I give it a 10 out of 10. That's assuming he does his peer reviews next week, which I am assuming he will, right? And halftime show. Yeah, we're at the halftime show on this assignment. And if he doesn't, then it would get dropped down, But everyone's just talking football now. Fantastic. Okay, so we're going to move on to a new topic, and this topic is actually the hardest one we'll cover all semester. So we got 10 minutes left, so pay attention. It's the notion of valid, invalid, and sound arguments. And this is something that we will hammer all semester long because, from my experience, students have a hard time getting. So there's two different ways of judging an argument. Okay? The first is if the logic works. If the logic flows from the premises to the conclusion, and the conclusion must be true if the premises are true, then it's a valid argument. But that doesn't mean the premises are necessarily true, right? For example, if I said, if Trump was president, then he has the ability to write executive orders, the logic is correct, or you'd probably need another premise in there saying presidents have the ability to do executive orders, right? So here's an argument. Premise 1, Trump is president. Premise 2, presidents have the ability to write executive orders. Conclusion, Trump has the ability to write executive orders. This is a valid argument. It's a valid argument because the logic is correct. Premise 1, X is Y. Premise 2, Y has the ability to do Z. Conclusion, X has the ability to do Z. It is a valid argument. So after you've evaluated an argument to see if it is valid or not, then you check to see if the premises are true or not. Is it true that Trump is president right now? No. Right? So this is a valid argument that is not sound. These are step 1, you evaluate validity. If it's not valid, it is what is called an invalid argument, and you stop there. You don't check soundness. So there's 3 options. There's invalid, there's valid but not sound, and there's valid and sound. Every argument in this class, you will have one of these 3 options available for it. And all you people talking Super Bowl, you should be paying attention right now. Okay. So let's do some examples. Socrates is a man. Premise 2, all men are mortal. Conclusion, Socrates is mortal. What do you think? First of all, let's talk about validity. Is this a valid argument? X is a Y. All Y are Z. X is Z. Is this a valid argument? X is a Y. All Y are Z. Therefore, X is Z. Yeah, it's valid. Is it sound? Are the premises true? Is it true that Socrates is a man? Well, let's not worry about present tense versus past tense. Like, you know, I'm not gonna, you know, I don't split hairs like that. Like I typically take the plain reading of text. Like, you know, all men are mortal. That means humanity, right? It doesn't mean like male gender, right? Socrates is a man. All men are mortal. Therefore, Socrates is mortal. So we agree that the argument is validity. It is valid. Are the premises true? Is Socrates a man? And is it true that all men are mortal? What do you guys think? We're not talking about validity now, Chase or Cho. We're talking about soundness now. So, is it if the premises are true, this is a sound argument. It's valid and sound, right? So, yeah. So this argument, I would say, is valid and sound, or sound for short. You can't have a sound argument that's invalid. So I just say sound. It's a sound argument because the premises are true. The logic works. It is valid. It is sound. Boom. Done. Okay? What about this one? All birds can fly. Bats are birds. Therefore, bats can fly. Let's look at the logic first. All X are Y. Bats are X. Therefore, bats are Y. Is this valid? Let's take it. There's two steps. There's two questions. Step one is validity. Is this a valid argument? Does the logic flow? X is a Y. All Y are Z. Therefore, X is Z. It's the same logic as the one on the previous slide, actually. Right? This is actually the exact same thing. All men are mortal, right? Socrates is a man. All birds can fly. Bats are bird, right? It's the exact same logic. I switched premise 1 and premise 2, but it's the same logic. You know? So this is a valid argument. Okay? Therefore, bats can fly. And in fact, the conclusion is true. But were the premises true? It is a valid argument. And this is, yeah, this is why this is such a hard concept for people to grasp. Is that the argument is not sound. It is not true that bats are birds, right? There's two questions. One, does the logic work? And the answer is yes, the logic does work. But question two is, are the premises true? And premise 2 is not true. It doesn't matter if premise 1 is true. If either of them is false, then that's it. It's unsound. This is the exact same argument as the one on the previous slide. The difference is one of the premises in this one is not true. So this is a valid and sound argument. This one is valid and unsound. It's valid but not sound. Okay? Also, yeah, actually, you're right. You're absolutely right. Not all birds can fly. That's also that. Yeah. Sorry, that's yeah. Premise 1 is also false. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, penguins. Well, you've never seen the BBC documentary on the flying penguins? Why would the BBC lie to you? Right? Why would somebody just go onto the internet and lie? Right? So the BBC did a April Fool's Day video on penguins that fly, right? So yeah, so premise 1 is false, premise 2 is false. However, the logic is valid. It is valid but not sound. Okay? Chickens can actually fly short distances, right? So yeah, emus, ostriches. You're absolutely right. Okay. Validity works more closely with the conclusion. No. A lot of students will look at the conclusion and be like, well, bats can fly, therefore the argument must be good. No. It has nothing to do with it has to do with, does the premises connect to the conclusion? right, in such a way that if these were both true, is the answer, the conclusion, also true, right? It is impossible for these to be true and this to be false, right? The conclusion follows from the premises. That's what it means for something to be valid. And what breaks the brains of my students every semester is that this argument is actually valid. It's not sound. The premises are not true. Neither of the premises are true. Sorry, I misspoke earlier. But the conclusion must follow from the premises. If these premises were true, then this must be true. Okay. Yeah, anything can fly if you try hard enough. It's the landing that you might have trouble with. Okay. It is valid. It is valid. So, Patino, there's two questions. The first is, does the logic follow? And the logic does follow. All x are y, Bob is an x, x is y. That is a valid argument. The logic follows. The second question is, are the premises true? And so if the second question is no, in this case, no, the premises are not true, then it is valid, but not sound. There's three possibilities. One, the logic doesn't work, which case is invalid, stop. If the logic does work, then you've got two options. The premises are true, therefore it's valid and sound, or the premises are not true, either of them are not true, and then you have valid but not sound. Okay? This is how you evaluate an argument. Okay? Where is it? There. You first check the logic, then you check to see if the premises are true. And a lot of people get tied up on the fact that the premises are wrong. They're like, it's invalid. No. Okay. Excellent. So all cats are mammals. All dogs are mammals. Therefore, all cats are dogs. Does the logic work? All x are y. All z are y. Therefore, x and y are all x are y. All z are y. Therefore, x and z are the same. No. This is not valid reasoning. All humans have hair, all dogs have hair, therefore all humans are dogs. No, it doesn't work that way. Because you can have different groups within mammals, right? So you stop. You don't, some students are like, well, that's true and that's true. No, it doesn't matter at this point. If the logic doesn't work, you stop. It's invalid, done, throw it in the garbage heap, three-pointer, boom. You're done with it. It's invalid, okay? You don't even need to look at the soundness of it. Stop. Okay. If Socrates was a philosopher, then he wasn't a historian. Socrates wasn't a historian. Therefore, Socrates was a philosopher. Dogs are male and cats are female. That's funny. If Socrates was X, then he was not Y. Socrates was not Y. Therefore, he was a philosopher. Therefore, X. No, this is invalid. Because, just because we know he wasn't a historian doesn't, and this is, I guess, presuming that jobs are all mutually exclusive or something. Just because we know that he wasn't a historian doesn't mean that he was a philosopher. He could have been a history teacher. He could have been a janitor. He could have been a stone cutter, which I think he was, right? So this is an invalid argument. All we know is that if he was a philosopher, he couldn't be a historian. But, and then all we know is that he wasn't a historian. He could have been something else besides a philosopher, right? So we don't know anything about what he actually was. We just know he wasn't a historian, right? And so the logic, you can't conclude he was a philosopher for that. There's 9 million other jobs. He could have grown olive oil, half of Athens. Okay. Premise 1, all engineers enjoy ballet. Premise 2, some males are engineers. Conclusion, therefore, some males enjoy ballet. First question, is it valid? Is it valid? Don't get caught up in the truth and falseness of the premise first. All X are Y. Some males are X. Therefore, some males are Y. All X are Y. some males are X, therefore some males are Y. This is actually true. This is actually a valid argument. Okay? The logic is valid. The logic is valid. Or the premise is true. Is it true that all engineers enjoy ballet? No. So this is valid but not sound. Okay? It's valid but not sound. Do you guys understand? This is the process through which we look at an argument and evaluate it, and you can't just immediately jump to it like, no, that's not true, because this isn't about you're used to just true or false, right? And there's actually three possibilities, right? Invalid, valid, and sound, right? Invalid, valid but not sound, valid and sound, right? Those are the three possibilities. So you have to figure out why it's wrong. Is it wrong because the logic doesn't flow, or is it wrong because the premises are wrong, right? And the reason why I'm going this today is because this is what you're going to do for your peer reviews. On Friday, when you get your peer reviews, you're going to examine their arguments and see, are their premises correct? Did the logic flow? All right. So that is we're over time for today, so we'll stop there. I'll put up some questions on Canvas and see how y'all do on it. If you do poorly on it, don't fret. It is in a list of X, all values are B, and then a subset of X. And all values are B, the subset of X. Yeah. So don't fret if you get it wrong. This is something that we will practice repeatedly because it's really important to know. And in just for argumentation in general, when you look at people's arguments online and things like that, oftentimes you will see, after you've been trained in critical thinking, you're like, all right, that's a valid argument, but the premises are wrong. If it's true that this, well, yeah, but it's not true. So, your logic works, but your starting point is wrong. So it's a valid but not sound argument. Okay. So we will do lots of practice on this. It'll be on your both finals, both midterms and the final, and it's the most important stuff we do in the semester we do up front, so that you can get lots of practice at it during the semester. Okay. Are overgeneralizations valid? Give me an example of an overgeneralization. All dogs have four legs or something. So the premise was wrong. It is not true that all engineers like ballet, right? If that's kind of what you're getting at with an overgeneralization, the premise is wrong, but it doesn't matter. For questions of validity, for the question of validity, all that matters, it really helps to just convert it into logical, all X or Y. Bob is an X, therefore Bob is Y, right? If you just sort of switch out engineer and ballet and all this kind of stuff, with just X or something, a lot of times that helps keep you from getting distracted, because people are like, well, it's not true that all engineers like ballet. Invalid. No, you gotta be like, all right, no. If it was the case, that all engineers like ballet and some men are engineers, then it is absolutely the case. It necessarily follows that some men do like ballet. That is, if the premises were true, that's one way of doing it. Just assume that they're true. Assume it is true that, Trump is president right now, and assume it's true that the president has the ability to write executive orders, then it is absolutely the case. It necessarily follows that Trump has the ability to write executive orders right now. That's step one. That's the validity check. After you've passed that, then you go back and look at the premises. Is it true that Trump is president? No. Done. It is valid because it passed step one, but it is not sound because it did not pass step two. So that's the two-step process of evaluating an argument. And you're going to do it in real life, so to speak, on the discussion boards when you get your peer reviews on Friday. You will not get peer reviews, by the way, if you don't write the essay. So if you don't write the essay by Friday, then you don't get a peer review, and you're going to be a sad panda because you're going to lose all the points on the assignment. Like I said, a big part of this class is just being can you read directions and do them on time and, do what's asked for, And if you can do that, you basically get an A. Um, I am not a harsh grader, but it is the case that, you know, if you just don't do the essay, then that you're going to get a 0. Like, it's just, you know, that's just how it is. So all computer scientists are socially inept. Here he's a computer scientist, therefore he's socially inept. Yeah, I would say that's valid but not sound, right? Although that is something I have said in real life, right? Like, you know, if I had social skills, I would be a computer science major, you know. So, Courtney loves pandas a lot. No, that's a South Park reference. So, yeah. So, yeah. I mean, pandas are fine. I did go to the San Diego Zoo to see them, but even the premises are false, they can still be valid. That is absolutely true. Yeah. So what you do is you just assume the premises are true and see if the conclusion follows from them. That's step one. Then after that, then you evaluate if the premises are true or not. And a lot of people do it backwards. And they're like, nope. That makes me a sad panda. There you go. That's the reference. Okay, so we're already over time, so we'll stop here. I'll put up a quiz on this topic, and then we will pick up this discussion on Wednesday and see how you did on the quiz, and then we'll either belabor the point some more or move on to talking about other topics, because we've been doing kind of critical thinking and logic for, you know, going to the 3rd week now. So we'll switch. Okay, thanks everyone, and I will see you next time. Peace out.